Brought to you by WikiVidi documentaries. Sonic the Hedgehog is a video game franchise created and produced by Sega. The franchise centers on a series of speed-based platform games. The protagonist of the series is an anthropomorphic blue hedgehog named Sonic, whose peaceful life is often interrupted by the series' main antagonist, Dr. Eggman. Typically, Sonic, usually along with some of his friends, such as Tails, Amy, and Knuckles, must stop Eggman and foil any plans of world domination. The first game in the series, released in 1991, was conceived by Sega's Sonic Team division after Sega requested a mascot character. The title was a success, it spawned many sequels, and it transformed Sega into a leading video game company during the 16-bit era in the early to mid-1990s. While the first games in the series were side-scrolling platform games, later games expanded the series into various other genre and sub-series, such as Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games and the Sonic Boom series. By 2016, the series had sold over 80 million physical copies of games, and over 350 million units. When combining packaged game software with mobile phone downloads outside of video games, the franchise has also been spun out into other media, including cartoons, anime, and a long-running comic book series, recognized as the longest-running based on a video game by Guinness World Records. Premise: almost all games in the series feature a blue hedgehog named Sonic as the central player character and protagonist. The games detail Sonic and his allies' attempt to save the world from various threats, primarily the evil genius Dr. Evo, Eggman, Robotnik, the main antagonist of the series. Robotnik's aim is to rule the world. To achieve this, he usually attempts to destroy Sonic and to acquire the powerful Chaos Emeralds. Sega Genesis and add-on devices. The first zone of Sonic the Hedgehog. The first Sonic game, titled Sonic the Hedgehog, was a platform game released in 1991 that featured protagonist Sonic running through the game's levels in order to stop Dr. Robotnik from taking over the world. The game focused Sonic's ability to run and to jump at high speeds with the use of springs, checkpoints, and loops. Its sequel, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, a platform game released in 1992, increased the overall size and speed of the series' gameplay, and was the second best-selling Genesis game of all time. The game introduced Sonic's sidekick, Miles Tails Prower, who followed Sonic throughout the game, and allowed a second player to control him in a limited fashion. This game also added Sonic's spin dash maneuver, which allowed Sonic to boost forwards quickly from a complete standstill. Unlike the previous title, where Sonic could only gain speed with momentum. The next sequel, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, was a third platform game in the Sonic series released in 1994. The game introduced a temporary shield maneuver, added new shield types to the series, and allowed Tails to fly under a player's control. It also introduced a new character, Knuckles the Echidna, who served as an additional antagonist with Dr. Robotnik for the game. Sonic and Knuckles, another platform game in the Sonic series, was released later in 1994. The game introduced Knuckles as a playable character with gliding and wall climbing abilities, and allowed gamers to plug in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 to the top of the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge as part of the game's lock-on functionality. This allowed gamers to play the game as it was originally intended. The games were intended to be one title, but were split due to cartridge space and time constraints. Explores Flying Battery. The second zone of Sonic and Knuckles The use of shields, checkpoints, and these basic level design and graphical assets were typical of the Sonic series' early years. There were several Sonic games for the Genesis that were not 2D platform games. Sonic Spinball, released in 1993, was a pinball simulation modeled after the Spring Yard and Casino Night Zones from the first two Sonic games. The game, unlike general pinball simulations, had an overall goal of collecting all the Chaos Emeralds in each level and defeating the level's bosses. It was one of the few video games that had elements from the cartoons Sonic the Hedgehog and Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine was a puzzle game similar to Puyo Puyo that was set in the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog universe. Sonic 3D Blast, an isometric, 2.5D platform game released in 1996 and developed by Traveller's Tales, featured Sonic running through pseudo-3D environments while trying to rescue Flickies from Dr. Robotnik. The Sega Genesis had add-on systems that incorporated Sonic titles. Sonic CD, released for the Sega CD, was a 2D platform game released in 1993. The game introduced the characters Amy Rose and Metal Sonic, and featured levels that differed depending upon whether Sonic was in the past, present, or future time frames. Knuckles Chaotix, a spin-off released in 1995 for the Sega 32X, featured Knuckles and a new group named Chaotix fighting against Dr. Robotnik. The game featured a two-player cooperative system in which the on-screen characters were connected by magic rings. There was also Sonic Eraser, a puzzle game released exclusively on Sega Game Toshokan in 1991. Due to the success of Sonic games on the Sega Genesis, the series was introduced to the Sega Master System and Sega Game Gear. Sega began by releasing Sonic the Hedgehog, a 2D platform game, in 1991. The game featured Sonic's ability to run and to jump at high speeds like its Mega Drive Genesis counterpart, but with notably different level design and music. Sega later released Sonic the Hedgehog 2, another 2D platform game, in 1992. The game differed from its Genesis counterpart with different levels and music and by not including a spin-dash maneuver. It also featured a different storyline in which Dr. Robotnik kidnaps Tails, who is non-playable in the Master System Game Gear version. Sonic Chaos, Sonic and Tails, released in 1993, was similar to the earlier two Sega Master System Game Gear Sonic games, but featured Tails as a playable character. A sequel, Sonic Triple Trouble, Sonic and Tails 2, a 2D platform game, was released in 1994 for the Game Gear and introduced a new character, Knack the Weasel, who, along with Knuckles and Dr. Robotnik, raced to collect the Chaos Emeralds. One of the last games for the Sega Game Gear, Sonic Blast, was released in 1996 and featured pre-rendered sprites. Several spin-off Sonic games that were not 2D platform games were also released. Sonic Labyrinth, released for Game Gear in 1995, featured an isometric view and slower exploration-based gameplay that resulted from Robotnik's replacing Sonic's shoes with speed-down boots. Sonic Drift was a kart racer released in 1994. It later had a sequel, Sonic Drift 2, which was released in 1995. Tails also received two spin-offs. Tails Sky Patrol, released in 1995, allowed players to control an always-flying Tails. Tails Adventure, released in 1995, featured a mix of platforming and RPG elements. Sega Saturn. Few Sonic games were released for the Sega Saturn. and none were a standard platform game originally made for the system. Sonic 3D Blast was released in 1996 alongside the Genesis version. Like its Genesis counterpart, the Saturn edition used isometric 2.5D graphics, but it added FMV cutscenes, enhanced music and visual effects, and a real-time 3D special stage. Sonic Jam, a compilation released for the Saturn in 1997, contained the original Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and Sonic and Knuckles, as well as a Sonic World mode, which allowed the player to control Sonic in a small 3D world. The Sonic World was mainly a means of accessing the disc's multimedia features, which included character artwork, the soundtrack, and Japanese Sonic videos. Sonic R, a foot racing spin-off and also the Sonic series' first fully 3D game, was released in 1997 for the Saturn and ported to the PC in 1998. The Sega Technical Institute attempted to develop a Sonic game for the Saturn called Sonic X-Treme. It was originally intended to compete with Nintendo's Super Mario 64 and Sony's Crash Bandicoot. However, due to time constraints and issues between STI, the Japanese division of Sega, and Sonic Team, the project was cancelled in late 1996. Dreamcast. Sonic Adventure, a launch title for the Dreamcast, was released in 1998 in Japan and 1999 in North America. The game was re-released for the GameCube and PC as Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut in 2003 with some graphical and gameplay tweaks, and in late 2010, ported to Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network. Its sequel, Sonic Adventure 2, was released for the Dreamcast in 2001, and was the last game in the series to be released for the Sega platform. In 2002 it became the first game in the series to appear on a Nintendo platform when it was ported, with several enhancements, to the GameCube as Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and in October 2012 it was ported to Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network, with a version released on Steam in November the same year. The only other Dreamcast Sonic game was Sonic Shuffle, which was released in 2000, and featured cel-shaded graphics and a board game concept similar to that of the Mario Party series. Dreamcast sales began to decline after the launch of the PlayStation 2, and therefore few Sonic games were released for the system. Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure was also released on SNK's Neo Geo Pocket Color portable console, made in the same style of the Genesis, Mega Drive era of games. Moved to non-Sega systems. After the commercial failure of the Dreamcast, Sega ceased producing its own video game hardware, focusing solely on manufacturing software for the GameCube, followed by releases for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Sonic's transition to the Game Boy Advance was completed with Sonic Advance, the first original Sonic title released for a Nintendo console. The game featured 2D platforming, similar to the original Genesis titles, and new gameplay mechanics from more recent Sonic titles as well, such as grinding on rails. It was released in late 2001 in Japan and early 2002 elsewhere, and ported to Nokia's N-Gage on October 7, 2003, as Sonicon. Two sequels, Sonic Advance 2 and Sonic Advance 3, followed in March 2003 and June 2004, respectively. Between Sonic Advance 2 and Sonic Advance 3, two other Sonic games were released: Sonic Battle, a 3D fighting game, and Sonic Pinball Party. a pinball simulation. The last Sonic game was released for the Game Boy Advance's Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis on 2006, which features the original Genesis game and the 15th anniversary mode with the spin dash. The first game released for the GameCube was Sonic Adventure 2: Battle, followed by Sonic Adventure DX, Director's Cut, each ports from the Dreamcast. Sega later released Sonic Heroes, the first Sonic game made for the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. It was released on all three systems on December 30, 2003 in Japan, with American and European releases following soon after. The game was similar to that of the adventure games, although the player now controlled the lead character of a team of 3. With the other 2 following behind. The player could then switch to a new leader at any time in order to use that character's special abilities. Shadow the Hedgehog was released in late 2005 in North America. It was built on a more advanced version of the engine used for Sonic Heroes. It focused on Shadow the Hedgehog as he tried to uncover his past. The game contained multiple paths and endings, as the player chose to take good or evil paths for each level. It also added wielding weapons and driving vehicles to 3D platforming. Sonic Riders was the first Sonic racing game since Sonic R. In contrast to the previous title, the characters used hoverboards, bikes, and skates rather than racing on foot. It was the last game for GameCube and Xbox, due to the extended life cycle of the PlayStation 2. It also received ports of Sonic Riders, Zero Gravity and Sonic Unleashed. 2 Sonic games appeared on the PlayStation Portable, Sonic Rivals and its sequel, Sonic Rivals 2. Both titles were 2.5D style games. 7th generation consoles. There were a number of different Sonic games released for the Nintendo DS. The first was Sonic Rush, released in 2005, featuring gameplay similar to the Sonic Advance series. It received a sequel, Sonic Rush Adventure, in 2007, which featured some additional new elements, such as the driving of jet skis and submarines. Along with the Wii, the Nintendo DS saw the beginning of the Mario and Sonic crossover games. The first, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, was released in late 2007, and featured characters from both series competing in Olympic-themed mini-games. Its sequel, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, was released in October 2009. And featured an emphasis on winter-based sports. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, a spin-off released in September 2008, was a turn-based role-playing game developed by BioWare. During this time frame, Sega took the franchise in a number of different directions. First was Sonic the Hedgehog, which was released in November 2006 for the Xbox 360. In December 2006 for the PlayStation 3. It continued in the Sonic Adventure direction, but was critically panned as a result of its glitches and rushed release. Sonic Unleashed was released in 2008 for the Xbox 360, Wii, PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. While possessing the same name and rough themes, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions were markedly different games from the Wii and PlayStation 2 versions. While the prior game in the era continued the use of numerous playable characters and playstyles, the following games would return to only have Sonic playable. Sonic the Hedgehog 4, Episode 1, an episodic high-definition 2D game akin to the 16-bit Sonic games, was developed for the PlayStation Network, Xbox Live Arcade, WiiWare. Sonic the Hedgehog 4, Episode 2 was released in 2012 for PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, Android, iOS, and Windows phones. Sonic Colors, a game for the Wii and Nintendo DS, was released in November 2010. It introduced a power-up system in the form of alien beings called Wisps. Sonic Generations was developed by Sonic Team for Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PC and DIMPS. For Nintendo 3DS, which was released in November 2011, featuring both modern and classic interpretations of Sonic. During this time, the franchise also moved into several new spin-off series. The Storybook series, which combines Sonic gameplay with the story and setting of famous books, comprises 2 games only released for the Wii, Sonic and the Secret Rings and Sonic and the Black Knight. Another spin-off series resulted from Sega's collaboration with Nintendo and the Mario series of video games. In the Mario and Sonic titles, characters from the Sonic and Mario universes compete in Olympic Games-themed mini-games. Separately from the series, Sega also collaborated with Nintendo to include Sonic in their 2008 Wii fighting game Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Sonic Colors, released in November 2010, expanded further on the Rush series gameplay, with the addition of the use of Wisps, which gave Sonic various new power-ups and gimmicks. Sonic Free Riders was released in November 2010 as a follow-up to the Sonic Riders series, and was developed exclusively for Xbox 360's Kinect system. Later on, Sega Superstars Tennis for the Wii, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2 and Nintendo DS was released in 2008. And Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing for the Wii, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Nintendo DS and PC and iOS was released in 2010, followed by a sequel in 2012. Even early in the system's life cycle, a number of Sonic games were announced for the Nintendo 3DS. At E3 2010, an Untitled Sonic game was announced for the system, which later turned out to be a portable version of Sonic Generations, a third installment of the Mario and Sonic crossover series, Mario and Sonic. At the London 2012 Olympic Games was also released for the Nintendo 3DS. Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed was released for the Nintendo 3DS in February 2013, and for the PlayStation Vita in November 2012. In October 2012, Sonic Jump was released on iOS. And in March 2013, Sonic Dash was released. 8th generation consoles. In May 2013, Sega announced a partnership with Nintendo, which established that the next 3 Sonic titles would be developed exclusively for the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U, with Nintendo publishing the titles in Europe and Australia. The first games to be released were Sonic Lost World in 2013, followed by Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games by the end of the year. Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric for the Wii U, and Sonic Boom: Shattered Crystal for the Nintendo 3DS, based on the new Sonic Boom franchise, together formed the final installment in the exclusivity agreement. At the end of 2014, Sonic also returned as a fighter in both installments of Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS and Wii U. Sonic was added as a playable character in the LEGO video game, LEGO Dimensions, in November 2016. He is distributed via a level pack that includes an additional Sonic the Hedgehog-themed level and vehicles. 2 upcoming Sonic games were revealed at the Sonic 25th anniversary event during San Diego Comic-Con 2016. The first game was Sonic Mania, which emulates the gameplay and visuals of the original Sega Genesis titles, and will release in Q2, Q3 2017. Development was done by Pagoda West Games, Christian Whitehead, and headcanon Simon Tomley. The second upcoming game, developed by Sonic Team, titled Sonic Forces, is currently slated for a Q4 2017 release. This title brings back the dual gameplay of Sonic Generations, along with a third gameplay style featuring the Custom Hero, a customizable third character who uses special gadgets. Both titles will release on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Microsoft Windows. Characters. The Sonic series has a great many characters. The most frequently appearing are titular protagonist Sonic the Hedgehog, a wisecracking blue hedgehog able to run at supersonic speeds, and recurring villain Dr. Eggman, an evil scientist whose ambition is to conquer the world. Among Sonic's many allies, the most well-known include Miles, Tails, Prower, a twin-tailed, highly intelligent yellow fox who is Sonic's sidekick and best friend, Amy Rose, a pink hedgehog who is Sonic's self-proclaimed girlfriend and a hero in her own right, Knuckles the Echidna, a cool-headed red echidna who is the guardian of the Master Emerald, Shadow the Hedgehog, an anti-heroic doppelganger of Sonic with a dark past, and Metal Sonic, a robotic clone of Sonic, built by Dr. Eggman with the sole purpose of destroying Sonic. Rings. One distinctive feature of Sonic games are collectible golden rings spread throughout the levels. This gameplay device allows players possessing at least one ring to survive upon sustaining damage from an enemy or hazardous object. Instead of dying, the player's rings are scattered. In most Sonic games, a hit causes the player to lose all of the rings. Although in certain games a hit only costs a set number of rings, such as 10 or 20. When the rings are scattered, the player has a short amount of time to recollect some of them before they disappear. Some causes of death cannot be prevented by holding a ring, including being crushed, falling into a bottomless pit, drowning, and running out of time. In many titles, collecting 100 rings usually rewards Sonic, or any other playable character, an extra life. Certain games in the series often reward the collection of 50 rings with Chaos Emeralds, access to the special stages in which the Chaos Emeralds may be obtained, or utilization of a character's super transformation. Rings have had other uses in various games as well, such as currency, restoring health bars, or improving statistics. Chaos Emeralds. The Chaos Emeralds are, in most games, 7 emeralds with mystical powers. They are a recurring feature of Sonic games. The emeralds can turn thoughts into power, warp time and space with a technique called Chaos Control, give energy to all living things, and be used to create nuclear or laser-based weaponry. They are the basis of many of the game's plots, and the player is frequently required to collect them all to fully defeat Dr. Eggman and achieve the game's good endings, super forms, or both. The methods used to acquire the emeralds and the end results after collecting them differ between titles in the series. Most early games require the player to find the emeralds in special stages, while some modern games implement the emeralds as a plot element. In certain games, such as Sonic R and the 8-bit versions of Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the player is required to find the Chaos Emeralds within the zones themselves. The Master Emerald was introduced in Sonic and Knuckles as a plot element. It resides in a shrine on Angel Island and is guarded by Knuckles the Echidna, as only those of the Echidna tribe are able to control it. The power of the Master Emerald is what keeps Angel Island afloat in the sky. It can control the power of the Chaos Emeralds, including neutralizing or amplifying their energies. In both Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2, the Master Emerald becomes shattered, requiring Knuckles to find the scattered pieces during his levels. Special stages. Usually, special stages were employed as a means of earning Chaos Emeralds. Special stages usually take place in surreal environments and feature alternate gameplay mechanics to the standard platforming of the main levels. The 16-bit Sonic the Hedgehog consisted of a giant rotating maze, which many considered a major technical achievement. The most common special stages, however, were segments with the character running through a long tunnel to collect certain items. 3D collect item levels, as in Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, used the same perspective, but had Sonic collecting all the blue-colored orbs on the surface of a giant sphere. Finally, Sonic Advance 2 employed a 3D ring collecting stage, and Sonic Chaos used a variety of gimmicks for its levels. Since emeralds of the 8-bit version of Sonic the Hedgehog were hidden in the main stages, the game's spring-filled special stages were merely used as a means of adding variety. Increasing score and earning continues. Similarly, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, in addition to the main special stages, featured entirely optional bonus stages, one of which combined the rotating maze of Sonic the Hedgehog with the pinball gambling of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Sonic Heroes contained an alternate special stage for a chance of earning additional lives. Super Transformation. A super transformation is a state certain characters go into that gives them incredible speed, near invincibility and a change in color. In some games, characters are still vulnerable to being crushed, drowning, falling into a pit or running out of time. Depending on the type of transformation, the condition to attain such a form is an individual making contact with all of the Chaos Emeralds, the Sol Emeralds, or the Master Emerald. Super transformations first appeared in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, where Sonic transforms into Super Sonic if all 7 Chaos Emeralds and 50 or more rings are held at the same time. While in supersonic form, Sonic gains invincibility and has greatly increased speed. 1 ring is lost for every second that passes, and Sonic reverts to normal if the number of rings drops to 0. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Tails can also transform after gaining all 7 Chaos Emeralds and Super Emeralds. Sonic and Knuckles can also transform into their Hyper counterparts with the Super Emeralds. Hyper Sonic, Hyper Knuckles, and Super Tails all have unique abilities aside from invincibility and increased speed. In most 3D Sonic games starting with Sonic Adventure, Chaos Emeralds are collected in non-interactive cutscenes as part of the story, with Super Sonic and other super characters only appearing in the final boss fights. Most 2D Sonic platform games, like the Advance and Rush series, have retained the gameplay-based emerald collecting, but still have Super Sonic only playable in the extra boss battles. Recent games such as Sonic the Hedgehog 4, Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations, and Sonic Lost World once again allow players to play as Super Sonic during normal stages, provided they have all the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Metal Sonic, Shadow, Blaze, and Silver are the characters that are known to be able to perform super transformations. Metal Sonic can also use the Master Emerald or Chaos Emeralds to turn super, and Blaze, instead of using the Chaos Emeralds, uses the Sol Emeralds. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.